Mr. Carney has no mandate. He has not been elected by the Canadian people. He's been installed by the Liberal establishment and Justin Trudeau's insiders. They've been hiding from the media because every time he answers questions, he gets caught in lies or says incredibly idiotic things.
Mark Carney was sworn in as Prime Minister today, and for the first time, we were able to see his choices of cabinet ministers as we approach a federal election. Pierre Poilievre gave his thoughts on what transpired today and came to the same conclusion that we did. The name at the top has changed, but everything else is status quo. So, did anything really change?
Let's take a look. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the truncated cabinet by Mark Carney that was sworn in today. Normally there's around 40 or 50 cabinet ministers, but in this case there's 23.
I think it used to be 37, if I'm not mistaken. So Trudeau had a large cabinet, and with cabinet ministers, they get paid an additional 50% of their MP's salary. So if you're losing what sounds like about 15 cabinet ministers, already there's some money savings there. So to look on the bright side, it is saving taxpayers to have a smaller cabinet.
Now, here's the interesting thing. So it looks like Carney did try to go for gender parity in here, as there are 11 women and 12 men. Notice the one more man than women.
Well, it's an odd number. You're not going to split someone in half.
But that's not the number we're focused on. So there's 23 people in cabinet. Here are the cabinet ministers that didn't get shuffled out and were present under Trudeau. So all but 5. That's a huge number, folks.
So it's pretty much the same people running the country.
Right. Now, François-Philippe Champagne moved from, financing, Liberal insiders under the portfolio of innovation to the portfolio of financing insiders under the Minister of Finance. So that's his new position. Dominic LeBlanc moved to international trade. And Chrystia Freeland, you'll notice she is back. She is not Deputy Prime Minister. There is no Deputy Prime Minister. She is now Minister of Transportation and Internal Trade. And Stephen Guilbeault is now the Quebec Lieutenant. Bill Blair is still Minister of Defense, and Steve McKinnon has moved on to Minister of Jobs and such. And David J. McGuinty, who was literally just made the Minister of Public Safety, is still the Minister of Public Safety. And everybody gets shuffled around.
So then who's the Minister of Justice? Because I feel it's a very important role.
So that is Gary Anandasangari. And is he qualified? I don't know.
He's not as qualified as Larry Brock.
Nobody's as qualified as Larry Brock in this government.
So, That's right.
But this is the thing. This is going to be a big problem for Mark Carney when it comes to the election, because they're all the same people. They're all Trudeau cronies. That's going to be the problem for him.
Well, and some of the people that I noticed that he got rid of from cabinet were Jenna Suds, who is going to be running in the riding of Canada, unless she's retired and I didn't hear about it, but she's going to be running against Conservative Greg Kung. And I really think that he's going to give her a run for her money. So I'm wondering if that was done because she is perhaps not expected to maintain her seat. And the same thing happened with former House Leader Karina Gould, who was also an opponent of Carney's for the leadership race. She runs in the riding of Burlington, where it seems that Emily Brown is the favorite to win, Conservative Emily Brown. So I wonder if Karina Gould was removed from cabinet because she's not really expected to win her seat.
As the saying goes, nobody likes you here, man. But Pierre Poilievre decided to come out right after Mark Carney was sworn in and his cabinet was sworn in, and he gave his thoughts on what happened.
To take back control of our economy and become a sovereign, self-reliant, and stronger nation, to stare down American economic aggression and better stand on our own 2 feet, to bring home Canada's promise that hard work gets you a great life in a beautiful home, on a safe street, protected by solid borders and brave troops under a proud flag. That's our mission. But today I'd like to begin by congratulating, I should begin by wishing Mr. Trudeau a happy retirement and all the best to his family, and congratulating Mr. Trudeau's economic advisor, Mark Carney, on becoming Prime Minister only 3 months after he moved his headquarters out of Canada to New York, moving jobs away from Canada. Today, Liberals are trying to trick Canadians into electing them for a 4th term in power, with a cabinet that is 87% the same as Trudeau's cabinet. 100% of today's Liberal cabinet were in Justin Trudeau's Liberal caucus. These same Liberal MPs voted to hike the carbon tax, double the debt, double food bank lineups, and double housing costs. The same Liberals all supported blocking pipelines, LNG plants, and passing the anti-energy law C-69 that has made Canada even more reliant on the U.S. Stephen Guilbeault, for example, the radical anti-development activist twice arrested for climbing buildings illegally to block resource projects, a self-described, and I quote, socialist, has been promoted to be the minister responsible for all of Quebec, but also responsible, according to Mr. Carney, for nature. That means nothing will get built anywhere in Canada because he will be standing in the way. Meanwhile, all of Trudeau's Liberal advisors, Gerald Butts and Tom Pitfield, are now top Carney advisors. They were in attendance today, not even hiding that they're still the ones running the show. The same people who ran Justin Trudeau are now running Mark Carney. Carney's chief of staff, his Liberal chief of staff, is a former Trudeau minister forced to resign for many scandals, including lying about moving Paul Bernardo out of a maximum security prison. You see, Mark Carney thinks Canadians are stupid. He thinks that a little bit of cosmetic surgery will allow the Liberals to disguise who they are and make people forget what they did for 10 years in order to elect them to a 4th Liberal term. But it's the same Liberal gang with the same Liberal agenda, the same Liberal results, and the same Liberal promises of the last 10 years. Only they want you to be fooled, and they want to take 4 terms. Carbon tax Carney will try later today to pull another fast one. This one's going to be very sneaky, very sneaky. I call it the carbon tax con job. I told you this was going to happen, by the way. Don't say I didn't warn you. He's going to hide the consumer carbon tax for 60 days. And if he's reelected, he'll bring it back bigger than ever with no rebate. Let's be clear. He says that the carbon tax he intends to bring in after the election will be a, quote, shadow carbon tax. And we know that he loves carbon taxes because he publicly advised Trudeau over the last 5 years to raise the taxes even more. But here's what I've got. This is the Liberal carbon tax law. This law cannot be eliminated unless Parliament resumes to vote it down. Mr. Carney could have asked Trudeau to do that months ago. Mr. Carney could have reconvened Parliament today to vote this law down, but he won't. He will keep the carbon tax law in place even while he temporarily hides the carbon tax from the gas pump for 60 days leading up to the election. And after that election, if God forbid he were reelected, there would be a bigger carbon tax than ever before.
So as we said on the live stream, this is what the Conservatives would do. They would go after the fact that these are all the same Trudeau ministers. And Trudeau's party is such a weak party that there was nobody to swap in and out.
Right.
And the fact that he kept so many Trudeau ministers means that this is a cabinet not long for an election. That's what this means. Otherwise, you'd be able to afford to bring in a whole bunch of new people and allow them to settle into their job.
Right. This is essentially like shuffling the chairs on the deck of the Titanic. as it's going down. Like the iceberg's already been hit, it's going down.
Right. So, and the fact that he made Marco Mendicino his chief of staff, like,
that's peculiar to me because chief of staff are not typically MPs, are they?
Right, but Marco Mendicino has indicated he's not going to be running in the next election. So again, this indicates we're not long for an election.
Right, because if Marco Mendicino is not running to be an MP again, at least he can still be chief of staff.
Right. Now, the only thing that we've been told that may not complicate, but it may shuffle out, when Mark Carney is going to call an election is the Liberals are frantically filling all of the candidate positions that are across this country for the next election. So there are around 100 left from what we've been told.
So about a third, let's say.
So now those can be appointed. Mm-hmm. They can be appointed if need be, and which means that can happen very, very quickly. So
yes, sometimes in some ridings they won't appoint a candidate until like a couple weeks before. So this is not unusual. It is a large number for the Liberals to have so many seats vacant, or I should say, to have so many nominations vacant. But again, if the writ drops this coming week, they can fill them very, very quickly.
And they would be, right? So no doubt what the party is doing and has been doing is putting together a list of potential candidates that they would be comfortable running in each of these vacant ridings. And then they would say, okay, you, congratulations, you're the candidate, get to work. So that takes care of that. And the Conservatives still have some people to nominate as well. The NDP, I think they're mostly done. So they're pretty much ready. So we'll see what happens. But the real interesting part of this press conference came when Pierre started to take questions.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Alexa Lavoie for Ribbon News. If you can answer the question in French and in English. So my question is about the Liberal contest. The Liberals say that nearly 400,000 people registered to vote in their leadership contest, but only 150,000 of those were verified, and they have not explained why nearly 250,000 voters were disqualified or otherwise didn't vote. And the riding by riding results are remarkable. Karina Gould only got 190 votes in her own district, and Chrystia Freeland only received 188. How concerned are you about the integrity of Carney's mandate?
First of all, Mr. Carney has no mandate. He has not been elected by the Canadian people. He's been installed by the Liberal establishment and Justin Trudeau's insiders. They prevented people from debating him. They've been hiding from the media because every time he answers questions, he gets caught in lies or says incredibly idiotic things. As for the Liberal leadership result, those numbers are either just pathetically low because Canadians did not want to vote for a weak, conflicted Mark Carney who had sold out the country by moving jobs and money out of Canada, or they show something more suspicious. But unfortunately, I don't have all the details. All I can say is that is a very small number of people that voted in the Liberal leadership race, much smaller than in ours. We excited people because people thought this is a chance to bring home the Canada that we knew and still love, where you can work hard and have a great life, where you can afford a home and where seniors can put food on their tables, where our streets are safe. That's one of the reasons why I was blessed to receive the biggest number of votes of any leadership candidate in Canadian history that I'm aware of.
That was a beautiful answer. It really was.
Well, and there's many things that he actually touched on there. I love the fact that he said, well, first off, Mr. Carney doesn't have a mandate, which he doesn't.
Correct.
He doesn't.
Because he's not elected.
Right. So he's the only thing that he has been voted for is the leader of the Liberal Party. He hasn't been voted into a riding to represent Canadians, so he isn't a member of Parliament. So he's in fact, a token prime minister is what he is. Now, I think it's also interesting in the way Pierre answered that very controversial question. And I think he answered it, to Tanya's point, very, very well. He stayed away from the controversial aspect. He said, well, if only 150,000 people voted, which means 130,000 people voted for Mark Carney, he said that's a pathetically low number. But if there was something more suspicious there, then that could be a problem. But as he is rightly saying, he doesn't have all the information, and nobody has all that information. So, but as mentioned, we're going to be having an interview with a Liberal Party member who did work for John Turner, one of the previous prime ministers, ironically, the previous unelected prime minister.
So he's seen this before.
Yes, he's seen this before. And we'll get his take on the leadership race, the transition, Mark Carney, and all of the above. But it's a very interesting answer that Pierre gave.
The question in French was about whether I think that Mark Carney will abolish the carbon tax. Well, the truth is he can't do that without recalling Parliament. This is the carbon tax law. It's in place today. Until Parliament is recalled, this carbon tax law will be the law of the land.
So, what are we talking about? Now, you may or may not have heard that Mark Carney met with his cabinet and had a photo op opportunity while he was speaking to his cabinet, where he signed the quote-unquote termination of the carbon tax. Now, this is what we postulated Pierre Poilievre would do as soon as he took over as prime minister. So this is exactly what Mark Carney did. What he did is he issued an order in council, the equivalent of an executive order in the United States, where he essentially either reduced the carbon tax rate to zero, or the order was to the CRA to stop collecting the carbon tax.
Now, it's suspicious to me that this happened right now when it did, because it seems like it's another bid to buy votes. If you guys remember in the winter, just before Parliament took the winter break, they had this GST holiday to try to win back votes because Canadians were miserable. And the Liberals told us, oh, well, this is going to help families and blah, blah, blah. So I think that this order in council to reduce the carbon tax rate is going to help people see on their home heating bills that, well, I'm not paying this carbon tax anymore. I'm not paying HST on top of that carbon tax anymore. And when they go to fill their cars up at the pumps, that, hey, gas is cheaper. Oh, the Liberals did that.
Well, and this is the thing. And when Carney announced that he was doing that, and then he signed the order, there was these clapping seal moments, where all of the people that voted for the carbon tax and voted to increase the carbon tax are now clapping that he is eliminating it. Come on, people.
Well, and Pierre's correct. If he wanted to eliminate it, all he had to do was recall Parliament and put a bill through to get rid of the carbon tax bill. But that's not what they're doing. They're doing an order in council for 60 days, it sounds like. And that's going to be enough time to get us through that election period. What are they going to do when Parliament's actually formed again?
Well, if Carney's elected, let's take him at his word. He's going to move the carbon tax over to the industrial side. He's going to implement a brand new carbon tax tariff, jacking up prices on all of the goods that are coming into the country from the United States, from China, from Mexico, from other countries that we don't regard as a climate like-minded country. And it's going to be just as bad, if not worse. So that's what we're going to get. Oh, you're eliminating this carbon tax, but you're moving that over here and creating a brand new one. So
it's a carbon tax shell game.
Well, we've gone from one carbon tax to +2.
And now Canadians won't get that rebate. So, I mean, yes, we have looked at the math and we have determined that getting that rebate back is not offsetting what you're paying into it. But under these new carbon tax changes, if the Liberals win the election, you're not getting a rebate at all.
So it's even worse.
What he might do is hide the carbon tax by telling CRA to stop collecting it for 2 months before the election. So let me ask you if you think this is a believable proposition. 100% of his ministers voted dozens of times not just to impose the carbon tax, but to raise it. Mr. Carney, his only public criticism of the Liberal carbon tax was that it was not high enough. They've had this tax now for over 7 years. The law that they still have in place would quadruple it to 61 cents a liter. And you believe that they're not going to bring it back 2 days after the election? Well, I think Mr. Carney has some land he might sell you in Florida, some swampland he might sell you in Florida if you believe that whopper. The reality is that Mr. Carney loves carbon taxes, and if you elect him, you will pay a brutal price. And he has also said he will be bringing in a shadow carbon tax targeting Canadian industry, and he has specifically singled out steel. There will be tens of thousands of steel, aluminum, cement, and other industrial jobs lost under Carney's carbon tax. The combination of Trump tariffs and Carney's carbon tax will destroy our industrial sector and make us hopelessly dependent on the Americans, all while profiting Mark Carney's personal investments in other countries, investments that he still knows he has, investments that, like the carbon tax, he just wants to hide. The good news is that common sense conservatives will axe the tax for real, for everyone, for good. We will make sure it never comes back. There is only one way to axe this tax, and it is to vote for the Canada First Conservatives.
Can't put it any simpler than that, folks. And this is why they don't want Mark Carney in front of the cameras. And this is why Mark Carney is denying questions to reporters. Not a good look.
No, and it's going to look even worse now that he's prime minister.
Right. So really not a good look that you're telling every people, no, sorry, not answering your questions. And the first thing he's doing, no, sorry, taking a trip so I don't have to answer your questions. Because that's next week. He's taking a trip to Europe. Europe, of all places, not the United States.
Going back home, is he?
Yeah. Going back to his homeland. Maybe he's making a pit stop in Davos. I don't know. But, this is Mark Carney, everyone. This is Mark Carney. He is the globalist, the elitist, the I'm too good for Canadians. And I think we're going to find out right quick, really what Canadians are going to think of Mark Carney the minute he starts answering questions, because he's going to have to. Otherwise, he's going to be called out. He's going to have to be called out by the press because they're not answering any questions that he has. He's not meeting with them. So if the press can't even talk to Mark Carney, that's going to be a problem. And the Conservatives and the NDP and the Bloc, they're going to be going after Mark Carney. The NDP just released an ad that got millions of views going after Mark Carney.
An NDP ad.
Right.
Interesting.
So, with the little money they've scraped together, they've managed to actually put something successful together. So, but
are you sure it wasn't Protecting Canada that was footing the bill?
Pretty sure. Can't confirm that, but pretty sure. Anyway, folks, it was quite the day. There's a new token prime minister for Canada, and man, it's one more step towards the next federal election. We're just chomping at the bit as to when.